Welcome back, everybody. Debbie and Dan here with Chapter 3. If your team sucks, find out why. And today, we are talking about leadership behaviors that enable dysfunction. Debbie, welcome back. Super excited.
Hey, everybody. I love this. Yes, excited too. What are we talking about today, Dan? What you going to
All
ask
right.
me?
So we're continuing the conversation from last week. Last week, we were talking about dysfunction in the team and the whole good and fine and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
This week, I think is super cool when you wrote about when dysfunction becomes the norm and it's actually being rewarded, which
Yeah.
I found kind of crazy, right? And like, who actually rewards dysfunction? But I know
You did question me about that, right? You thought, what?
how is that possible? But here's the best part. I know you got a story about this, right? There's something that you can relate this to.
Yes. Always have a story. Always. Actually, I have a couple stories, but yes, I do have a story. And this happened with, it was a significant organization there. They actually, all over that beautiful state where you're from, there in Florida. And so it's a facility that they have a dietary department in there, and they feed several hundreds people, let's just say on a daily, weekly basis. But part of the work that I was in there was, again, everything that Cultural Alignment Solutions does, just pulling everybody together, play team and all of that. And one of the pieces that I noticed was resistance coming from that dietary department.
What does resistance look like? What do you mean by resistance?
Resistance, they don't want to play with what we're doing, right? Pulling together team, having the conversations, getting under the covers, looking at where their success is coming from, where might be the breakdown. And here's the thing, usually if I'm called in to work with an organization, the company already knows there's an issue with this particular team or department or things like that. Mm-hmm. My job is to just really find out why. And I'm going to be really honest with you. It had nothing to do with the director of dietary. The issue was with the director of dietary's leader, right? That sat up on the higher office, not being aware of what was going on, but rewarding the outcome. So basically what was happening is, on paper, everything matched. Everything actually looked great. Numbers were great. Inventory was great. Labor was great. Everything was running awesome in this facility. But when you got under the covers and you started digging into that, food that should have been let go of wasn't being let go of. It was being cooked instead of not being cooked. Labor, while labor looked good on paper, they were way understaffed and overworked. And the team, you talk about disgruntled. It was just not a healthy situation. More about the labor. Forget the food piece. That's an easy fix, in all honesty. Right. You come in, just never again, and off you go. But when it comes to labor, and you now have a team that does not trust their leader, and here's the biggest reason why they don't trust their leader. Because that leader was able to keep their labor numbers on paper so powerful, that leader actually went home quarterly with bonuses in their pocket. Those workers didn't.
So that's where the rewarding comes in.
Yes. And so you're rewarding someone to do a behavior over and over and over, even if it's to the expense of the hands that are giving you the value. So therefore now when they went in and said, whoa, this has to stop. No, you are not, basically your team is not strong. We do need to get these numbers regulated. Now, talk about dysfunction. The team is waiting for the left foot shoe to fall. Basically, they're like, this ain't going to last.
Yeah.
Right? He's going to figure out something to manipulate and get his bonus back, but then let the pendulum swing the other way. And I'll just jump to the end of the story. Do you think the director stayed?
You can't, right?
No. The director did not stay because bonus was taken away. The director didn't stay because the reward was taken away and didn't want to do the work to be able to earn the reward the way it was designed. Correct. So that's what I mean. A lot of times with dysfunction, we allow it to go on when we're rewarding behaviors that we actually don't want and we're not aware that they're actually happening. So that's why I say it was really that leader's responsibility, because by the time it came to, and it didn't come to surface till they brought our team in to get underneath the covers. And all we did was ask questions. Because when I got down there with that dietary team, they weren't happy. And when you have that much dysfunction, that low, that quick to give me that information, there is definitely something going on up.
So, I mean, that's up and down the chain at that point. It's so talk to me then. Like, I love what you say about, hey, if you don't like what you're seeing, what you doing?
Yeah, if you don't like what you're seeing, what you doing? Yes, and that came, in all honesty, blurped out of my mouth one time on a coaching call. It was a frustrated leader, and I said, well, if you don't like what you're seeing, what you doing? Right? That was the exact question that I asked them, because the what you doing means doing nothing is doing something.
Yeah.
Right? Inaction is still an action. Inaction is still a language. Not listening or not being available, not being accessible, not being accountable is feeding 9 times out of 10 every single thing that you don't want on your team.
Well, I think that's what, honestly, it's one of my favorite parts of what you always talk about, and I always go back to it, is that just action, accountability, follow-up is just like, okay, what was the action? Like, who's accountable, and what's the follow-up? And like, how does that come about? But in doing it, and it goes back to what we said last week around just mastering the basics and being good at the discipline of staying on the basics.
Yep.
Of the one-on-ones, of the communication, of the each little piece of communication with your team.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you were to narrow it down, let's say to 3 behaviors, right? So these are those leadership behaviors. And this is about the leadership behaviors that we're going to see. So, right, the last chapter was about what are we going to see in our team. Let's go right to the leader. The 3 things you're going to see is micromanaging. Why would a leader micromanage? Because they don't feel like their team's going to do anything. So they're right there, right there, right there, right there.
Yep.
Right? And I'm going to some people will disagree with me here. I'm going to paint a picture for you, because I think micromanaging can look very different if you'll take this broader view with me. Again, you might totally disagree. Some people view micromanaging as almost like a chicken, all the time, constantly pecking. And I'm not saying that's not it. Yes, that's it. However, what about those times when you have a manager come together, they peck, but then they disappear for a while?
It's almost worse, because it's like, hey, you only show up when you're
and then
getting
they
the
peck.
pressure. Yeah.
That's exactly it. And that is definitely a form of micromanaging, right? So let's take a quarter. Here's what our initiatives, everything we got to hit for the quarter. And a lot of times organizations don't even look at it that soon, right? Sometimes they don't even, they throw it out during goal season, or here's what we're going to do. They never look at it again and then come back in a frantic.
Yeah.
Yes, and that frantic part is micromanaging. Where it shows up could look very, very different. It could be very oppressive, right? All the time. But I like to really shine the light on those times of where is it just as much micromanagement and it's your own anxiety. It's because you didn't do your part. What are those setup factors, right? Those measurements for success that you're going to put into play and stay with it, that cause you to go into these micromanaging manic moments? Now write that one down.
I'm trying to see that in my head and I can't, right? So the micromanaging
manic moments. We're going to write a book. Yeah. right? So that is definitely a leadership behavior. Those manic moments of anxiety, all that stuff going off there, which then automatically leads to trust on both sides. You all of a sudden now don't trust your team to get shit done, right? That's why Debbie's getting a call. My team don't get shit done. Well, you've just told me you don't get shit done, but that's okay. My team doesn't get shit done. Trust is blown up all over the place. And right here on a side note, for those of you that have not listened to Brené Brown's Anatomy of Trust, go look it up on YouTube. It is the best 9 minutes of your life. It'll change everything. It will change. Yeah. We no longer can say, if I said to you, hey, Dan, I don't trust you, that's like a huge blow, right?
Oh, yeah. It's like a knife in the back, right? Like, where does this come from?
Yes. But if I said to you, hey, Dan, I know we had that meeting scheduled. I was really expecting you to show up. And I know you said it wasn't on your schedule. However, I just kind of felt let down a little bit. What does that sound like versus, hey, I don't trust you. I don't trust you to show up for meetings.
Well, yeah, it's huge.
It's huge.
Right? Yeah. I mean, it's a massive shift in the way that it comes across from the trust to a disappointment, right? It's different energy levels.
Yeah. And trust truly has an anatomy. And when we learn how to go, what is it that we're not trusting? So it's easy for me to say your team doesn't trust you, but that's why I'll really push what is it that your team's actually saying? Can they trust you to cancel on a meeting? Can they trust you to not be there on time? Can they trust you to make a plan and not follow it yourself? What are the actual things that can't be trusted? So when you understand that, you have groundwork to grow a relationship exponential when you can start realizing where can we gain, again, the communication around it, which that's then the other third piece of the leadership piece is once again poor communication. And so speaking that anatomy, speaking anatomy of trust, speaking those pieces out is far more powerful.
Yeah, it's interesting the way that you put it, right? They trust you, but it's what do they trust you to do? Which I think is a huge piece. And I love that because it ties directly into where we go next in chapter 4 in creating a culture of accountability. And I think that's going to be a massive one because
that's my favorite.
Yeah. So super excited. This is Dan and Debbie signing off for Action-Based Leaders. Tune in next week when we dive into chapter 4, creating a culture of accountability. Thanks, everybody.